Alright gang, here we are. We're in exercise 9-10A. Now in 9-10A, they gave us, as a starting point, our code from the previous example. That was the multiplication. They gave us that back to a degree. I said, here you go. Here's what it looks like if you multiply these things. There's a little modification to it, but not much. So what they want us to do is, rather than having static inputs in our creation of these objects, what I mean by static, you run this, and every time you run it, it's going to be the same thing. Fraction 1 will be, or F1 will get populated with those two values, 2 over 3, so it's 2/3. Fraction 2, or F2, will get created or instantiated using the values 4 and 5. Now, that works, that's great with what we just did in the previous example. That works fine for the addition one. But what they want us to do now is create functionality that allows the user to populate the values being passed when we instantiate fraction. There's the first part of it. But that's not all. They also want us to store those values rather than F1, F2, F3, etc. Store those values in an array. We're going to create an array of objects, and each one of those instances of the fraction class will get stored, first one in fraction 0, fraction 1, 2, 3, etc. So that's something that we've already done to a degree. But now we've actually got to lay it out where this array gets populated. And once we populate the array, we'll do that with, we'll create a getData function, or getData method, I should say. And let's start out. Let's do this thing the way we need to do it. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and decide how we're going to acquire this data. And I'm going to create a static void getData method that receives fraction class, and we'll call it F in there. Alright, so here we go. Here's our getData method. When you call it, you pass it that fraction class, we'll call it F inside, and that will then populate F for us. Now, this is going to be an array, so get back to how we pass arrays back and forth. It's passed by reference, not by value. So with that said, this will help us to acquire those values, the whole number, numerator, and the denominator. Okay, so this will populate the attributes of F. Since it's being passed by reference, whatever happens here happens at the destination or in that memory location. Whatever, we passed it. Now, let's start out. I'm going to go ahead and let's get rid of everything that we did in here. Wipe out our main. And the first thing that we're going to do is replace some of what we just had with the creation of our array. All right. Here's our array. We'll call it F. It's an instance of fraction. It's a fraction array. 4 positions in there. We're going to have 4 objects in our fraction array. And we've got an instance of fraction called answer. We'll have an x and a y, and our x and y will allow us to populate our array. So how we're going to go ahead and populate our array, and we're going to do it with a for loop like we generally do when it comes to populating an array. And go ahead and tab these things in so I've got better indentation. So here's our for loop. From 0 to, as long as this thing is, stay within the bounds of our length of the array, one at a time. F with an index of 0 will be the first time, is a new instance of fraction. We will invoke our getData method that we created below and populate. We're passing it f of x. We're passing it that array index 0 the first time. Passes by reference. That's a big deal. And since I'm passing by reference, when I get down in here, f dot whole num equals temp. Okay. And we did our try parse. We talked about that before. If it can be an integer, we'll go ahead and do that. Now, that populated our array, item by item. Ask the user for data, one item at a time. So this got stuff in the array itself. Now, once we get the stuff in the array, we can go use that same structure, our for loops, and come down and we'll create some more for loops and write out what's in the array. So we're going to do an addition, and you say here's addition, go through the for loop item by item, and we'll go ahead and we've got them nested, x and y that we declared up above, and we will pass, we do our math, item by item, answer, and then we do our multiplication, item by item. So this is logically the same thing we just did in the previous two examples, but here we've got nested loops. Now I want to run this so you can see what takes place here. Hang on. It says that we've got a little bit of a problem. Problem is on line 4. Okay. I think I've got an indentation issue here. Let me pause a second and check my indentation. Okay, I did have a little issue. Now I'm going to scroll through the code. I went ahead and ran it. I addressed it, I ran it, and it's prompting me for enter whole number portion of the fraction. So I am in my acquisition or get data method. Now, check your code. I'll go through this so you can check to make sure that your code is the same as mine. Check the indentation. Okay. Here we're creating the instance of the array. We populate the array here. Here's where we'll do our output for addition and our output for multiplication. This closes out our main. Declare static void get data. So here's our get data method. We pass it fraction f by reference. That populates, goes back to actually populate that array declared above. Come down, here's our fraction class. Should be the same as they provided. Got a couple of integers, actually 3, whole num, numerator, denominator. Same code that we've used time and time again now. All the way down. We've got our addition operator method. We've got our multiplication operator method, the same as we had before. We actually reduce it here. Here's where we convert to string for the output. So go ahead and run it. 2, 0, 2, 3, 0. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. And it populates it on out for me. We go run this thing to see what we've got, run our checks. It's happy with it. So pause the video as you need. Check to make sure your indentation, check to make sure that there's no typos. Should be good. This one wasn't as complex as it appears if we break it down item by item. This one right here, bright line, here's our external for loop, our internal, to navigate through the array one at a time. One's the array for the first value, one's the array for the second value. Okay. So, that said, that'll get us where we need to be. We got our 100%, and we've used both operators, addition and multiplication, and we've stored our data in an array of objects. All right. So, see you on the next one.